Almost every time money crosses a border, from one bank to another, a single quiet message is sent, in a format that thousands of banks, in more than 200 countries, have all agreed to speak. It moves no money at all itself, it simply carries the instruction. And yet, cut a single country off from it, and that country is suddenly locked out of the entire global financial system. This is the story of SWIFT, and of a decision that could only ever work if fierce rivals agreed to build something together. Here is the pattern worth learning. Call it neutral rails. When everyone in an industry needs the very same road, there are only really two ways to build it. One company can try to own it and then charge everyone else a toll to use it. Or the rivals can build it together as something that not one of them controls. And very often, the only version that everyone will actually trust and use is the one that nobody owns. So travel back to the early 1970s. When a bank in one country needed to send money to a bank in another, it used an ancient, clunky system of typed messages sent over a network called telex. It was painfully slow. It had no shared format at all, so every message was just free text that a human being had to read and interpret by hand. Errors were constant, fraud was easy, and a single payment could take a whole pile of messages and many days to finally complete. One giant American bank looked at all that chaos and saw a golden opportunity. It began quietly pushing its own private system, a standard that it alone would own and control, and that everyone else would simply have to plug into. In other words, the plumbing beneath all of global banking would come to belong to one single private company. And the rest of the world's banks looked hard at that idea, and they balked. Because here, exactly, was the fork. The banks could each just accept the American giant's private system and hand the keys of global payments over to a single powerful competitor. Or they could do something that bitter rivals almost never ever do. They could set aside their own fierce competition and build one shared network together, a network owned by all of them and controlled by absolutely none of them. And in 1973, that is exactly what they chose to do. 239 banks from 15 different countries came together and founded a cooperative. They spent years painstakingly agreeing on one single common language for money and building the computers and the private wires to carry it. And then, in 1977, it finally went live. One shared neutral system that any member bank could use to speak to any other member bank almost instantly and safely. Now imagine the banks had simply taken the easy path instead and adopted that one American giant's private system. Think carefully about what that would have meant. The plumbing beneath all of global finance would have belonged to a single company, in a single country, able to watch, to charge, and to quietly favor whoever it wished. And more likely still, the rival banks would never have truly trusted it, and the whole thing would have splintered into a dozen incompatible national systems, keeping the slow, error-prone chaos alive for decades longer. Only a network that nobody owned could ever hope to win everybody's trust. And that is the quiet magic of the whole thing. Because no single bank and no single country actually owns SWIFT, every bank on earth can safely depend on it. Rivals who compete ferociously for the very same customers will still route their most secret, most sensitive instructions through the exact same shared pipe, simply because they all know that not one of them controls it. Neutrality here was never a weakness. It was the entire foundation of the trust. Today, that shared network connects more than 11,000 institutions across more than 200 countries, and it carries tens of millions of messages every single day. It has become so essential, so deeply woven into the way that money moves, that simply being disconnected from it is now one of the most powerful economic penalties in the entire world. A humble cooperative built by rivals had quietly become the nervous system of all global money. Look back at the shape of the whole story. A shared problem quietly drowning everyone at once. A single player trying to seize the whole thing for itself. And then the rare and genuinely hard choice for bitter rivals to build the road together, precisely so that no single one of them could ever own it. The one thing they refused to fight over became the one thing they could all completely rely on. So here is the lesson worth keeping. When you and your rivals all need the very same foundation beneath you, the winning move is very often not to seize it, but to build it together as something neutral that none of you controls. So ask yourself, honestly, where are you fighting hard to own a road that you and everyone around you would all be far better off simply building and then sharing together?